To say that I'm obsessed with personal finance is an understatement, but I've struggled to find someone I can relate to who can provide sound money advice, partly because in generations past, my culture has frowned upon these types of discussions. The Check Your Money podcast was created in my quest to find a space of support and network of people just like me that want to grow financially. I'm excited to share ways you can improve your current and future financial health, set and meet money goals, and even plan for retirement in this ever-changing economy. I hope that by the end of this episode, you'll say to yourself at least once, I need to check my money today. Welcome to Check Your Money. I just want to start off by saying that this particular episode was very difficult to do research for. I didn't realize when I started that there was a cultural difference in who's been affected financially by COVID-19. I did a lot of research, and my intent was to segue into how to build a 6-month emergency fund. And I'm still going to do that. But again, as I began the research and really spent many, many hours going through some of the studies and some of the articles, I was really disheartened to learn that there's a huge difference between Black and Hispanic families versus white families as far as who's been affected not only by the disease, but also who's had a financial impact. So I hope that you get something out of this episode, even if it's just the education as far as the statistics go, but also that maybe the plan that I've come up with in order to be able to create a six-month emergency fund is also helpful as well. So I'm in touch with quite a bit of people who have been affected financially by COVID-19. Some have been let go of their jobs completely, and some were furloughed, which means that at some point, hopefully, they'll get called back. And also some who have experienced temporary, and some of those people don't know how temporary, pay cuts. I know some who had emergency savings to cover this time period, and I know others who didn't. The last point is the most, again, disheartening for me. So in the financial world, you see a lot of advice about how to invest and how you should have documents in place and all that. You see a lot of you should have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And when I say it that way, it's because I'm doing air quotes in the background. And I've done a lot of research, and in the other podcast that I co-host, it's called Finances, and I provided those recommendations based on studies that we've done in school. However, as I've provided that advice, I've struggled in providing it because I know so many that are living paycheck to paycheck. I can't tell one of my particular good friends that I have in mind, oh, you should be planning for retirement, when I know how much her childcare costs. And she'd smack me if I try to tell her what to do with her extra money, because the fact is she has no extra money, at least not right now. So what do I tell her and people like her? This is why I created this podcast, so that I could be able to do that for you guys. So coronavirus wasn't expected, depending on what theory you subscribe to. But for some groups, it was a recipe for financial disaster. So when you look at this by education level, about half of Latinos without a college degree have either been affected by a job loss, pay cut, or know someone who has. About 37% of those with a college degree can say the same. So it's not a huge difference, but it's definitely less. As for regions in the country, the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, or what's known as the DMV area, is only about 10% Latino. But the Washington Post reports that we make up about a third of the cases in the area, despite being only 10% of that population. They also attribute this to the high rate of us in the service industry that left us. I'd say us. I'm not from there. I'm just, saying us just culturally, I'm us, but has left them with the inability to quarantine. So speaking of the inability to quarantine, let's say one person had to keep working. And the fact is that many Latinos live in multi-generational homes. So you've got your kids and maybe both or one of your aging parents. One person keeps working because they're considered essential, and it leaves everyone else exposed. Add to this the fear that immigrant families have that immigration agents could be waiting for them as they seek treatment or testing. So it's no wonder when you really think about it, the high cases. It seems, based on what I read, that counties that are majority Black have 3 times the rate of infections and almost 6 times the rate of deaths as counties where white residents are the majority. According to the Washington Post, elected officials and public health experts have pointed to the generations of discrimination and distrust between Black communities and the healthcare system. African Americans are also more likely to be uninsured and live in communities with inadequate healthcare facilities. According to Pew Research, which I'll talk about a little later, but in the month of April, it was reported that 61% of Hispanic families and 44% of Black Americans either personally experienced the job or wage loss due to COVID-19 or knew someone who did. This is compared to 38% of white Americans. Another aspect that I think hasn't really been talked about too much is domino effect. I never realized there was a term for what I'm about to get into, but to my surprise, it was a thing. I know families who do this. I didn't realize it was an actual term. So remittances. If you're someone in the States that sends money back to your family, back, to your country or your island of origin, these are called remittances. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is money sent in varying amounts, according to what people can afford, of course, except in Cuba, where in this past October of 2019, the government limited remittances to $1,000 per person per quarter. And this isn't money sent for birthday or Christmas presents. This is money that is sent to help support their low-income families. Over 50% of households in Latin America, countries such as El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, receive remittances. They're estimating about 1 million households to be affected by this. And by this, I mean not being able to send the money right now. The associated countries that would be the most hit are Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Honduras. So as a result of coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, a 7% decline is expected. So that I know that doesn't sound like a lot. Well, in 2019, $76 billion in remittances was sent from the US. The expected 2020 number is $70 billion. So that's a $6 billion decrease. And this is to people who use this money to eat, to get medications, and to sustain themselves. And this is what I mean by the domino effect. And I'm not talking about thousands of dollars per family. In general, I'm talking about $40 to maybe $100 or so a month being sent. That right now is not possible because we just don't have it for the ones that are sending it to their families. Black and Hispanic families have been hit the hardest with job losses, higher risk of infections, and then lower money in savings. So to quote a CNN article, quote, "The average Black and Hispanic families are already bringing in less income than the average white family. And they also have a smaller buffer of liquid assets such as savings and investments," end quote. So these workers are more likely to be in jobs where the pay is hourly. It goes on to say that Black and Hispanic families earn between 71 cents and 74 cents for each dollar earned by the median white family. Are you still with me? Okay, so we earn less than the median white family, but milk doesn't cost any less for us. Lastly, liquid assets, so investments and stuff like that, also demonstrates a racial gap, where in turn means Black and Hispanic families have a smaller cushion. So to provide the comparison, for every $1 in liquid assets of a white family, the median Black family only has 32 cents, and the median Hispanic family has only 47 cents compared to $1 of the median white family. According to the study, COVID-19 Crisis National Latino Survey, which was conducted in April, 3 out of 4 Latino adults fear not having the money to cover rent and basic expenses. And that's 75% of the Latinos polled. Most not only had less than $500 saved, but a third had already gone through their savings and retirement. According to a survey performed also in April, 73% of Black adults and 70% of Hispanic adults said they didn't have a 3-month emergency fund. 47% of white adults said the same. Of the Black and Hispanic adults that responded to the survey, it was also stated that not only did they not have the emergency fund to cover their day-to-day expenses, but they also had no access to either borrow the money or sell assets to get it. So let me repeat this number. I need to make sure you heard me on this. 70 and 73% of Black and Hispanic adults, compared to 47% of white adults, do not have enough money saved to cover their expenses in case of a job loss. And so many have lost jobs over the last few months. At the end of 2019, Latino unemployment was near record low, which is great. But not only do many Latinos work in leisure, hospitality, and other service industries, but we're also less likely to have health insurance. We only recently started to come back from the Great Recession that occurred between 2007 and 2009. During this time, many didn't even see a cost of living increase and were grateful just to be employed. So I'm going to be transparent here. I do a lot of research and prep work when I'm creating content to bring to you guys. I try to stay organized because that's how my brain works, and I don't want to my way through this as I think of, what I want to say next. As I created this and went through the research, I was tearing up. I was fired up. I don't even know if you can hear my voice shaking in part of this. I apologize, but this really got to me. And it's not because I'm not aware that this inequality exists, but when you look at these numbers, you can't help but think, damn. Mainly because this isn't a new concern. This concern has always been there in our community. And I'm not going to lie, I have an emergency fund. Yet I'm always concerned that the rug is going to get pulled out from under me and I'm going to be screwed. Now, why am I telling you all this? These aren't random figures that I'm rambling off. These figures are a reality. This is why we as minorities push our children to get an education at all costs. But what's my point? As I've stated before, I want to motivate you and inspire you. An emergency fund is important. All the statistics I just rambled off should prove to you that we need to have money saved. It is vital not only to cover expenses, but also to provide some peace of mind so that when something like this happens, we don't automatically think, crap, I'm screwed. Instead, you could think, okay, this sucks, but I'll be okay at least for a little while. Or while unemployment is delayed, you don't have to worry, how you're going to eat next Tuesday. So emergency fund. So if you do a search for how to do this, you're going to get the basics. Set a goal, automatic transfer into your savings, save your tax refund. That's great. And it sounds simple, right? But how realistic is that for everyone? They, doing the air quotes again, say 3 to 6 months of expenses is what you need to save. But what if your expenses equal what you bring in? Paycheck to paycheck. I'm going to go over 10 things that you probably haven't considered when you think about where to gather the money that might be hiding under your cushions in order to start this emergency fund. I hope that some of this is helpful for you, if not all. But first, okay, welcome back. You ready? All right, so first things first, you got to figure out where you stand. Sorry, you just have to. So I've always not liked the word budget because it sounds so restrictive to me. I've always liked to call it tracking your spending. So the term spending plan that I came across on a website that I'll talk about in a second, um, is what I'm going to go with. So you need the ability to be flexible. And that's what's important here because sometimes, let's face it, it is what it is. Right. And I've told people a million times, like, you can have one of these structured budgets, but that doesn't work for everyone because you can't tell somebody 50% of your housing needs, 50% of your income, sorry, needs to go to your housing because your housing is what it is sometimes. So I came across this website. It's Elvest. I also have their app. They have amazing articles. You have to go on there if you don't know about Elvest. There is also a great article on resources if you've lost income due to COVID. I will post a link to that article in the show notes. If you've been affected, you have to check this out. There are no, and I'm not getting paid for this by them. I just love the platform. So it's a robo advisor platform that's designed specifically to help women take control of their financial futures and close the gender investing gap. Okay. All right. So spending plan. In order to build your emergency fund, you're going to have to know where you are, what you have, what's going out. Okay. A Schwann survey shows that 78% of people who had written money plans said that they were able to pay their bills and save each month versus 38% of non-planners. And 68% of people with written plans had an emergency fund versus 26% of non-planners. So the bottom line is having a spending plan is the first step to start your journey to get off this paycheck to paycheck path. Once you have a visual of where you are as far as your income and your fixed expenses, you'll be able to start that path. And fixed expenses is basically a number that doesn't necessarily change from month to month. Elvest describes what they call a one number approach, where that one number is what is referred to as discretionary spending, meaning what you can afford to spend on non-essentials. This is where you'd pull the amount to be put into savings. I'm going to use that plan as my basis, but I'm going to tweak it a bit to what would be more helpful for me personally, and maybe it'll be a way that works for you. So step 1, how much do you make in a month? Easy. Maybe not so easy if you're a bartender or you're in a tip industry, but if you are, just average out what you make in a month and write that down. That's the number you have to work with. Your spending max. Notice that your spending max doesn't include your available credit on your credit card, okay? It is literally what you're getting in a month as income. Now, the second step is you're going to add up your needs and also your wants spent in the last month. Now, I know this may not be how everybody does it, but this is how I like to create this buffer. So, your needs are going to be your bills, so maybe your daycare expenses, your groceries, gas, whatever is a somewhat fixed expense every month. Everything you have. And I wouldn't guess, okay? You're going to forget stuff. So my suggestion is that you download your last bank statement, print that out, and grab 2 different color highlighters. Just print out a month. I'm not one of these, print out the last 6 months. No, that's just too much. Maybe 3 at the most if you want to catch stuff that bills like every couple of months. But honestly, for the purpose of this, let's just do 1 month. Let's make it simple. Let's see where you are. So you're going to grab those 2 different color highlighters. You're going to choose one color for the money you spent on bills, like needs. And while you're at it, another color spent on wants. So let me help you figure out the difference. Yeah, I know, like this may sound basic, but hear me out. Look at the charge for what you bought at the mall. Did you need that? Maybe you did. And that's okay, but really think about it. Because I can guarantee that for some stuff, when you really take a minute to think about that purchase, you may not have truly needed it. Or maybe you didn't need all 4 of it, whatever it is. So this will get you, I think, to start spending intentionally as well. And I mean, if you're on a mission to build your emergency fund, then unfortunately you really do need to start spending a little more intentionally. And this doesn't mean that you can't do anything fun, but it does mean you should really think about how important it is to you to spend that particular dollar. And it also means that you don't charge what you want, or you don't charge the fun stuff, because that'll defeat the purpose too. You'll be doing okay over here and creating a problem over there. And you don't want to do that. Okay. So back to the calculations. You're going to take the number from step one, which is your spending max, how much you bring in, and subtract it from the number in step two, your needs and your wants spent over the last month. Whatever you get in that, the difference, that's your extra. But now keep in mind, you added in your wants in step two, okay? So if you do these calculations and you're at zero, you're going to say, all right, Norma, I told you, paycheck to paycheck. But by including what you spent on wants, I just created a little wiggle room for you so you could see that you can play with that to increase or create your extra. So maybe really look at those highlighted items and see what you could do away with. Use what you could do away with and put that amount in your savings to start your emergency fund. Make that amount a bill. Clearly, you could afford it. It's part of your income, right? So make it a bill. Don't make it a, well, if I have enough left over, I'll put that in my savings. No, you found $50 that you didn't really need to spend last month. That's $50 you could put in your savings next month, along with spending intentionally. So that $50, like I said, is what you're going to use to get to your money goal. They say, again, I've said this twice already, but your emergency fund should be 3 to 6 months of expenses. But maybe right now your money goal is to have $500 in your savings account. Once you hit that 500, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to get that adrenaline rush that's going to help you set another goal. And once you're on a roll, because as I say, it takes 21 days to develop a habit, there's going to be no stopping you. All right, so you managed to find an extra $50, but you want to find more and you're out of ideas. I've got 10 for you. I didn't even set out to come up with 10, but that's how I ended up. So here I go. So number one, you got a car. When was the last time you got an insurance quote for your car? So now, rates are more competitive if your credit score is good. But if you contact an insurance agency, and I don't mean an insurance company, I mean an agency that has like a bunch of companies that they have access to, they might be able to help you out. And not only that, but they'll they'll have access to companies you may not have even heard of and might be able to offer you something better than the one of the major ones. Or if you own your own home and you have, mortgage insurance, homeowners insurance or renter's insurance, but you have your car insurance somewhere else, you might be able to qualify for a bundle or what they call a multi-policy discount. So again, contact your local insurance agency, and you can get some quotes online. I suggest you get to a site that has the multiple quotes so they contact a bunch of different companies. You might, again, like I said before, you might only think about companies that you're aware of, and then there's another one that's the winner. Number two, open a high yield savings account. And that means interest. It's a high interest savings account, but they call it a high yield savings account. Maybe even at a different bank than you normally bank at. When you have a savings account, you normally earn interest, which means the money a bank pays you to keep your money with them. A high yield savings account is usually only available at an online bank, but it's still FDIC insured, which means you won't lose your money. It's not going to go down like it's in the stock market or something like that. And the reason I suggest this is twofold. Number one, you want to be able to access this for emergencies, but you want to make it just a little bit of a hassle to reach. The one I have takes like 3 business days to transfer for free, and then they charge you a fee if you want to access it the same day. So there's a Kevin Hart clip that I always like. It's called, if you Google or search the way my bank account is set up, it's funny, but you'll only really get it if you have one of these accounts. So it's like, oh, the way my bank account is set up, I have a checking and a savings, and it's funny. But by having to take that extra step, It'll give you a minute to think whether you actually need the money. And this money's not necessarily for growth like an investment is, but it also gives you the ability to have some growth. So right now it's not a whole lot. I think it's like at 1.3 most of the banks, but something is something and it's better than the zero, that you're getting somewhere else. So just getting back to the car, do you know you can refinance your car loan? So if you're on a high rate loan right now, you're not necessarily stuck. Call the bank that you have that loan with and see if they can lower it. If not, apply for a new one somewhere else. I know offhand, Capital One has some pretty competitive loan options because they send me emails all the time. But just check around. Um, this will save you some money over long term, and it'll also save you money on a month to month basis. So if you have a mortgage, I actually have 3 suggestions. There's the standard. You can see if refinancing is an option. They say that if you can get a percentage point lower than where you're at, then it's worth it. I say that you need to make sure that you look at all the costs to see if it's worth it. That percentage point is definitely worth it over time. But if you're not too far away from the end, then adding closing costs to your principal doesn't make sense. Also, you want to make sure that you find your comparable home values. And because sometimes an appraisal is required, and if your home value has decreased, then this is not for you. And you can do that on Zillow and a couple of the other websites just to see what the houses are selling at near you that are near your, how your square footage and stuff like that. That's what a comparable home value is. PMI. If you look at your mortgage statement, you might see something called PMI, which stands for Private Mortgage Insurance. You were likely assessed this because you didn't put down a high down payment or enough of a down payment, and the bank had to protect itself against the risk that you would default. So if you owe less than 80% of the value of your home, you can request that they remove this PMI charge. Um, the only thing I will say is that your loan may have special terms like I had, where you had to be on there with that charge for 5 years no matter what. But call them and find out. You might find out that you're only a certain amount of principal away from getting it removed. And if that's the case, see if you can pay that. And a little known fact. So, when you get that letter from your mortgage company like once a year that increases your payment, and you're so confused as to why, because you signed papers, they're allowed to charge you what they want you to have in escrow to cover taxes and insurance. Sometimes they assess your account and decide you don't have enough of a buffer in their opinion, so they raise your payment. Do you know you can call them and say no? Let me clarify. A few years ago, I had actually called one morning to find out what my PMI situation was. And my now ex-husband had just moved out and I wanted to cut down on expenses. Literally that very day in the mail, I get a letter saying that it's going up like $100. And I call a friend to vent. And he says, call them and tell them you can't pay that. And I was like, huh? He said, it's a suggestion, but you could say no. So I call and I said, yeah, I literally just called this morning because I could barely afford the current payment. And now I get this letter raising it. So they explained the buffer. And I said, okay, but do I have to have this buffer? And they said, no, ma'am, but you need enough to cover the actual amount needed. I said, okay, so can I just do that? And they said, yeah. So every year I get this letter and I made the same call and I just say, okay, what's the amount I actually have to have? And it's usually like 15 or $20 more than I was currently paying. And I would agree to that 15 or $20. Student loans. Have you tried refinancing those? I wouldn't do the federal ones, leave those alone. But your private ones, try refinancing those. I see that SoFi has good rates. And also, if you're going to go with SoFi, you can get a discount on your interest rate if you have an account with them. So open that first and put a little money there. So there's a website. This is number 6. If you're keeping track, this is number 6. USA.gov / unclaimed dash money. You might be surprised to learn that there's some money out there that hasn't made its way to you. Or if you're the executor of a family member's estate, search for their name, or search for your parents, or search for your brother, your sister, or your close friends. I found my mom $1,400 on here last summer. All right, so take a minute. It might be worth it. Maybe somebody will kick you back some money if you find money for them. So on that website, you can search for unclaimed money in your state. You can search for money from a former employer or current, maybe, money from insurance, tax refunds, banking and investments, and international unclaimed money. All those links are there. Go check it out. Please tell me if you found anything. I would love to know. I get excited when I know people who find money on there because I told them to go on there. So check that out. Clean your house. Don't get offended. No te ofenda. But you could sell clothes, you could sell appliances, good quality furniture, and literally any random thing on Facebook Marketplace. Just meet them in a public place, please. A police station if you can. Craigslist, eBay, Amazon, ThreadUp. There's a bunch of these. People are more than willing to buy your stuff. Just anything you want. $5. I don't care. I sold an old bookcase one time for $15 and the thing was raggedy, but somebody wanted it. So check that out. Now, really examine your needs and wants that I talked about earlier. This will help you make necessary cuts to your spending. Look at your subscriptions billing on your credit card or your debit card because we've all fallen into this subscription mode and we don't read the fine print. Either A, you might have two people in your house paying for Netflix, Spotify, Disney Plus, any of that, and one of you could take it off and just, both of you use it. Or you could be on a family plan for Apple Music or Apple TV. Go on your phone, check your Amazon subscriptions. You might be subscribing to stuff on there that you don't even realize that you're paying for and you're not using it. That could be $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, but check it out and turn them off. Your cell phone plan. Maybe you're on an old plan and you could optimize that, meaning they can put you on something new that'll save you some money. Or maybe you're paying for a data plan on an old tablet that you may or may not have. So look at your bill and make sure you have all the devices that are on there and then call them. You might qualify, like I said, for a new plan, bundle plan, a family plan, an unlimited plan, something that'll save you some money. Or if you have, like I just talked about, the unlimited data plan on your tablet, maybe the tablet's paid off, maybe take that off and use the Wi-Fi from your house or your phone hotspot. And now you're saving, 10 or $15 there. Number 10, the last thing I'm going to go over is utility budget plan. So you know how you get your light bill or utility bill? That's a hard word for me. I don't know why. But in one month, it's $350 and another month, it's $125. You can't plan for that in a regular spending plan. But you can call them and get on what they call a budget plan. So this means they'll take 12 months of your usage, they'll average it out, and they'll come up with a 1 month amount that they're going to charge you. You pay that amount no matter what you use. High, low, it doesn't matter. You pay the amount that they told you. At the end of the year, if you actually ended up using more, what they'll do is they'll add that amount to the following year's calculation and give you a new number. And so you're not going to pay, let's just say you were under by $300 and you owe them $300. They're not going to charge you $300. They're just going to add the $300 to the following year and divide that by 12. And if you use less, same thing. They're going to see that they charged you too much. The following year, they'll reduce your budget plan so that it all evens out. I know when I was living in Connecticut, the last thing I wanted was a $350 bill in December or January when it was super cold, and it was an unexpected amount. So take what you saved in each of those 10 different cost-saving measures. Sorry, my telecom lingo doesn't leave me, but that's your new savings bill. That's the bill you're going to create for yourself to put in your savings. And you're getting that from the 10 different things or, maybe only 5 helped you out or whatever it is. But that amount that you saved on a monthly basis, that you're going to throw in your savings. You were getting it before, meaning you were spending it before. It wasn't really hurting you except that you weren't able to have savings. Now you're going to take it, you're going to put it in your savings. That's going to boost your emergency fund. So you can get out of paycheck to paycheck by doing some of these things and starting to build that up. It's not going to happen overnight. So be patient, but it will happen. And as long as you're doing this and you have this built up, something like COVID or unexpected, like COVID, doesn't have to cause you financial heartache, no matter who you are. I hope this helps. You got this. Check your knowledge. I want to talk about the Pew Research Center that I recently discovered. According to their website, the Pew Research Center is a nonpartisan fact tank that informs the public about issues, attitudes, and trends shaping the world. They conduct opinion haggling, demographics research, content analysis, and other data-driven social science research. So what does this all mean and what could it mean for you? Well, if you go on their website, pewresearch.org, I'll put it in the show notes. There's a bunch of tabs on the top. We have our own tab. It's third to last, but it's there, Hispanics. What you'll find is news and numbers, meaning they give you a lot of stats. I also noticed that they have a Latino as the director of global migration and demography research by the name of Mark Hugo Lopez. And one of the articles that caught my eye of his was called "Who is Hispanic?" So what they did was they did a poll, and people asked rather, if their particular circumstances made them Hispanic. First of all, I need to just say that it also showed that the U.S. Hispanic population reached nearly 60 million in 2018. Okay. Fun fact that I found on their website. But anyway, so people asked if their particular circumstance made them Hispanic, and every answer was, "You are if you say so." So it was very encouraging. I encourage you to check it out. Check out the stats that are of interest to you. Just beef up your knowledge on all things cultural. The more you soak in these numbers, the more you'll realize what's happening in our communities, what is really happening in our communities. Numbers don't lie. I don't know, maybe they do, but these numbers are crazy. You got to look at them. So again, website is called pewresearch.org. I want to thank you so much for listening. I hope that I've inspired and motivated you. My goal is that at some point during this episode, you said to yourself at least once, "I need to check my money today." You can find me on Instagram at checkyourmoney_podcast and Facebook at checkyourmoney. Hasta la próxima. Until next time. Thanks again for listening to the Check Your Money podcast. I would love to hear from you. You can email me feedback at norma@checkyourmoney.today. And remember to subscribe, follow, and rate at Apple or Google Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Also, if you can, please leave a review if you're enjoying this podcast. It's the easiest way to help it grow and be able to help continue to motivate and inspire others. The information provided in the Check Your Money podcast, associated social media accounts, and website is intended solely for the personal, non-commercial use of the user who accepts full responsibility of its use. While we have taken every precaution to ensure that the content of the aforementioned is both current and accurate, errors can occur. We accept no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content. The information provided by Check Your Money and its affiliated entities is general in nature, provided for educational purposes only, and should not be considered to be legal, tax, accounting, or investing advice. In all cases, you should consult with professional advisors familiar with your personal factual situation for advice concerning specific matters before making any decisions.